yeah.
I call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Aransas Pass, November 20th, 2017 at 6 p.m. And let's all rise for the invocation and the pledge.
Dear Father, we're here this evening giving you thanks for all the blessings that you've given us, my Father. As we're about to get into the Thanksgiving Day, we want to just remember all the blessings that we have received, especially after the storm that we've gone through, and how we fared much better than some of the others. No loss of life, my Father. We thank you for that. We ask your guidance upon us, the City Council, that we make the right decisions to guide the city forward and for our residents. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll go to the Board and Commission's appointment. It's for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we have the terms for Pat Finn, Lisa Barker, and Shirley Gallagher are the ones open. And I think we have Pat Finn and Lisa Barker re-seeking their appointment. So, just in favor of
So
the
that
council.
leaves one place available?
It leaves one open.
Well, I make a motion, we reappoint Pat Fenton and Lisa Barker to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's funny.
That was Jan.
Yes, she's not here, but she's like kind of here.
She got pancaked.
Okay, we're going to go to the consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of this item unless a council member so requests. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jan?
Aye.
Okay. Now we're going to Mr. Gary Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I have two items I would like to present to the Council for consideration. One is a resolution, the other is an ordinance. The first is an Aransas Pass finance policy, and the purpose of the policy that we're presenting to you is to provide an overall strategy for building and maintaining financial stability following Hurricane Harvey. The immediate goal is to provide support and discipline and direction for the fund balance and the reserve policy, and the reserve policy also being addressed during these two pieces of legislation. The long-term goal of this policy is to provide continued direction for financial and budgetary discipline. I'd like to point out a few highlights of this policy for your consideration. One is we've set up a system in this policy to monitor expenses, and there's a formula for doing that. For example, for the first month of the fiscal year, in expenditures, you shouldn't exceed, I think it's 8.33%. And that's the same formula we use for the revenues also. But as far as expenditures go, since that's what we're talking about, that's the formula we follow according to this policy. You can't, the first month, as an example, you can't exceed that particular percentage. And each month, that percentage grows, of course, and halfway through the year, it's 50%. Another policy is the general fund policy, a critically important policy. These are policies, and there's a list of policies in the policy that we'll be updating in the coming meetings for the rest of this year, and maybe even early into next year. The most critical right now is a general fund policy, and we're going to be talking about that later. But there are others, such as the the general budget policy. So it's in writing on our budgetary process, on what needs to be followed as far as our budgetary process. That's the kind of policy that we will be presenting to you as the meetings progress in the weeks and months ahead. Right now, tonight, we'll be dealing with the general fund policy in just a few minutes. Departmental budget reductions, we have to, in looking at the budget, we have to reduce the, and it's being suggested to department heads to reduce their budget by 10%. And that's necessary because of what we anticipate as far as expenses go related to storms, to Hurricane Harvey. So it's in preparation for the upcoming expenses. It's protecting and adding stability to the budget. Also, permitting and other city fees, we're suggesting, and the date is in there, no waivers or reductions in building fees will be permitted after December 1st. That's the date that's in there. Of course, this is for your consideration. If you have a different date, that's, of course, up to you. We are also asking that in the budget, travel expenses be looked at very closely. And when given the opportunity, or if the opportunity is there, reducing those travel expenses. Some department heads have already come to the office, to my office, and have already started taking those steps. Not-for-profit reevaluations. I know you've approved the budget already, but we need to look at 2019, and as we get further into this fiscal year, it may be necessary to even look at this year. But right now, this policy is saying 2019, next fiscal year, not this fiscal year. Events, we've got to look at the events and have to measure what we can afford as we determine what the income and the revenue is going to be as the year progresses. We don't know yet. We're just into our fiscal year, and Sandy is monitoring that very closely, and this policy indicates we should look at those events very carefully and maybe reduce them if necessary, but we need to look at them. That's the bottom line. Monthly public reports. We're starting that tonight. Sandy is starting, the finance director, Sandra, is starting a monthly report to you showing where the revenues and where the expenses are. Revenues and expenses and how they're faring up as far as each fund goes. You'll see that full report in just a few minutes. And finally, a 6-month review. After we get through halfway through the fiscal year, we need to sit down and review where we are. That's the financial policy we're asking for your vote on, or of course, if you would like to make any changes or additions, that's perfectly up to you. But that's what's being presented to you in the finance policy. And that's a resolution, by the way.
Well, I think it's something that we really need to keep a close eye on, as far as our expenses and being prudent as far as what we do as a city, kind of just tightening our belt even more, just to make sure that the city is.
And thank you. And one thing I didn't mention is every city is experiencing the same thing. We're not alone.
Correct.
It's because of the storm that we need to be very careful. And I forgot to mention that, and thank you.
Sure.
Alan, can we make a motion on both at the same time, or
I think you should do them separately.
separately?
Yeah.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2017-837, approving the post-Hurricane Harvey financial policy.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item, Mr. Mayor and Council, is the general fund policy, a critical policy for the city, for any city, not just us. The purpose is to adopt a policy, both long-term, short-term, that provides a plan to build the city fund balance and reserves. We're including reserves in that, even though it's in the charter. We're including it with this policy also. Following the anticipated financial needs from Hurricane Harvey. I want to point out the highlights very briefly of this particular policy. What is being suggested is that the general fund policy, be at 40%. Oftentimes, it's not unusual for a city to be at 25%. That's about 3 months of operation. You have to have that as something to fall back on in case of emergencies. However, it's been pointed out to us that because we're a coastal city, you may want to go higher just to be on the safe side. Consequently, we went from 25% to 40%. That's what's being recommended in this fund policy. That's the essence of it right there. We've added another element to it, and that is if you have too much in the fund policy, general fund policy, that means you're not managing well, meaning me, not managing well. You need to spend money on services in the community, so we should not exceed 50%. That's what's suggested in this policy. The final thing in this policy is the something that's already in the charter, and that's reserves. We are in your charter. It says 3%, and that's something that we want to maintain and add an additional element of enforcement with this particular ordinance to make sure we strive for that. So those are the two elements. It's the general fund policy and additional support for the reserves. 40% is a minimum on the fund policy, not to exceed 50%. That, in essence, is what's in this policy. And this is an ordinance.
Okay, well, I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2017-4204, approving the fund balance policy.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Now we'll go to Development Services, which is consider an act on request from Hogan Homes to reduce water tap fees for the Hogan Homes development.
Let me kick this off, if that's okay, Kat and Fernando. When we began the meeting, we thought there may be a difference between the amount for the tap from $50 to $200. We are now all in agreement. I'll just make this short. We're all in agreement that $200 is acceptable. Mr. Summers is here with Hogan Homes and is agreeable to the $200. So we could go into details, but would like to say that housing is so, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but housing is so critical to us right now. And that's a wonderful subdivision. And we have a good relationship, and we'll do all that we can to work with developers that the ordinances allow us to do. But we're as far as the tap fee goes for the sewer, that it would be up to $200, and we moved away from the $50, and Mr. Summers is in agreement. Kat or Fernando, do you have any comment on that?
Is that water and sewer?
Water tap. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Is that water and sewer?
Just-
Just water?
I think it is water and sewer. Yeah.
Okay, I just got one question.
Please. Yes.
In the same term, is that savings is going to be passed down to the people that buy the house, or what was already put on that particular house for the charge for those tap-ins that they're going to charge the people buying the house?
My understanding is, and actually Mr. Summers is the person to answer this, my understanding is that is passed on to the buyer to make it an affordable house. So that's our understanding, that it will be passed on, yes.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Jan Moore. So this is only the water tap fee. What would the sewer tap be? Because I called around today, and I know that Portland is only charging $100 water tap fee when the developer goes in and lays all the lines and stuff. So is there an additional sewer line fee?
Please.
Hi, Jan, it's Kat. And I was just talking with Trey because it was my understanding this was a request just for the water tap fee. I know that the main reason that we have whereas like Portland would do $100, they have a separate meter installation fee. and there will be some work that crew will have to do on the meter install that will take time. That's Fernando did evaluation of the amount of work, the reduction that what they've done will take as far as what it saves the city. That was the basis for the $200. But I do need clarification from Mr. Summers if this is for both the water and the sewer.
Well,
Sorry.
no, that's all right. Good afternoon, Trey Summers with Hogan Homes. I think we do need to revisit this together to make sure that we are all on the same page. It was my understanding that the water and the sewer tap fees were going to be combined in this. And we have pre-tapped the sewer and pre-tapped the water line as well. So and our plumbers, when they go run the sewer line from the house to the city sewer line, they will actually tie into that line. So that will not require any work from the city on their part. And then as far as the water meter goes, the only thing that the city would have to do is actually set that water meter, which probably means they would have to purchase the water meter as well. Because I don't know if y'all have you'll have water meters that are readily available. So that would be the only thing. So I think we just need to get clarification from y'all on if that is for both sewer and water, or if that is just for the water. I think in my letter I had addressed it as from a sewer tap fee. And I think there was just a little bit of confusion there. So do we need to revisit that before we move forward, or is that something that y'all would be?
That's refer to Fernando as far as what for the pre-tap sewer lines, does that remove city work entirely?
Yes, it does, but and with the meters, the meter setting fee is just $100 just for the setting the fee, not including the cost of the meter. So that's something we definitely need to look at.
So we need to just table this probably? Okay, all right, we'll table it so y'all can have a more clear, clarify all the fees and things, so.
Okay, I would like to make sure that this does get on the next agenda so that we can, because we are trying to move forward and submit starts, and we were waiting for this to be cleared up before we actually submitted a start. We have one down there right now, so we're trying to get through this. So if we can make sure that we can get this on the next agenda, that would be great and helpful. Thank y'all.
Well, I make a motion that we table the request from Hogan Home until the next city council meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Now we go to Sandra.
Okay, Sam.
Good evening. I'm going to be presenting the financial report for the month of October. I don't know if you all had time to review it or not, but it's up on your screen right now. Overall, revenues were down. Our target for the month for October should be our revenue should be 91.67% or less. That would be the bottom number where it says 93.53, where it says overall. That should have been in the neighborhood of 91.67 or less, meaning that we've collected more revenues than we projected.
What number are you looking at? The one at the very bottom
Yes,
overall?
yes.
Okay,
yes,
all
ma'am.
right. Sorry.
And, no, not a problem. So right now, we anticipated this due to the hurricane, that our sales tax revenues were down, that we are gonna experience some decrease in our revenues for the month. So, but fortunately, our expenditures overall were 95.24%, the very last number. So we should have been, we're trying to, like Mr. Edwards said, to stay within those 8.33%, which is 91.67%. So overall, the expenditures were much less than we had budgeted for the month. That created an overall, I guess, net income you could call it that, of $288,000, meaning we had a little surplus of money. We had more revenues that we collected than expenses that we expended for the month of October, in the amount of $288,000. Our general fund did have a little bit of a negative of $40,000 for the month. Obviously, we don't have any revenues in aquatics, no revenues in the Civic Center, because that right now currently is not an avenue that we can rent right now at this moment. But we're hoping, Mr. Edwards has, been very diligent in talking to staff and directors about keeping an eye on their budget. And you heard this evening of the policies that he's wanting to implement, and he's already started that with staff. So for the month of October, that would be our financial report. Do you all have any questions? No?
Sandra, no? No. Thank you, Sandra.
Okay. I have another item. Yeah. Okay, the second item would be the investment report for the month ending September 30th. The best page to look at would be your Exhibit A, which is your last page on the report. Basically, our target is always going to be the 3-month T-bill. That's going to be always going to be our target. It's the last page. The 3-month T-bill yield is 1.05%. That's sideways. I'm sorry about that. It's sideways. It's 1.05%. We should always strive to at least get that much, because that means if we were to purchase a 3-month T-bill, that's how much interest we would have made with our money. Unfortunately, we didn't hit the benchmark. We were at 0.69%. We had a lot of money in Prosperity Bank, and as you can see, we had roughly about almost $3-4 million in the bank, and we only made $427 in interest in Prosperity. So what I have done, and the chief of police makes up the majority of that money, they have like $2 million in forfeiture. He has agreed, and we've moved that money to Texpool, where we're going to hopefully see an improvement in our return there. And I moved our money that we received from our insurance, from the water tower, and money that we received from FEMA, where I'm putting all the money, only leaving operating money at Prosperity. Texpool right now is paying a lot more than is the bank. We don't have the luxury of tying our money up in a CD, where you were going to get more money if you're able to tie up your money for a year, and we don't have that luxury. We need to be liquid. Having our money at Texpool is like having it liquid. All I need to do is get a wire before 2:30, and it's in our bank that same day at no additional cost. So we're going to take that approach for now until we build up our reserves, where we could, potentially get like a CD and a letter, where you can have a CD renewing every month, and you have 12 CDs out there for 1 year. We would need to, once we have our fund balance to where we want it, we could go ahead and start doing that kind of investment. But for right now, to be liquid, I would put it in Texpool.
I would think Texpool would always pay higher than the bank,
Yes.
no matter how.
No matter how. But yes, Texpool will pay, but a CD will pay more than Texpool.
Not necessarily.
Well, in the credit unions, I know because through the MDD board and through the crime board, they have some money in credit unions, and they do pay more than the Texpool does. So at some point, we could move to like I said, like a ladder, where you have one CD renewing every month, and you have 12 CDs outstanding for a commitment of a year each CD. But right now, we're not there yet. But we will be, but not today. Today, I think the first step is moving our money to Texpool. So that's where our money is. So hopefully next quarter, when you get this report, you're going to see a much better improvement, and hopefully hitting that benchmark. Any questions?
Thank you, Sandra.
Sandra, based on the budget that you have, this is Jan again.
Yes, ma'am.
How long do you feel it's going to take us to get to that 1.05 benchmark, considering the state of the city and the hurricane and everything?
The 1.05.
What is the projection?
Yes, ma'am. The benchmark is going to vary every 3 months, because the 1.05 is based on what the market is paying. That 1.05 was just for this one particular quarter. I used Patterson's as my guide for the benchmark, and they track the T-bills in all different time frames, and I used them. So the 1.05 just happens to be for this one quarter, but our benchmark should be the T-bill, the 3-month T-bill. That's a very liquid format. of money. So next month, hopefully by moving our money to tax pool, we're gonna be at whatever the 3-month T-bill benchmark is for that quarter. That is my goal.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. Is that it?
Now go to public safety.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The next item that we'd like to talk, first off, Chief Blanchard apologized for not being here. He's doing his Thanksgiving holiday today, so you get me instead.
Oh, boy.
The first thing I'd like to talk about is the police department's asking for, we have body armor, which are bullet-resistant vests that expire. And you normally what we have to do is we need to move it after 5 years and save some space for us. And there's only two things that we can actually do. We can either dispose of it by destroying it, or there's a nonprofit organization called Armor of God. And what they do is we send them the expired armor. They refurbish it, and then they push it out to departments that can't afford the body armor themselves. They're committed to doing to try to get every officer in the United States outfitted with body armor in one way or the other. Even though it's expired after, and the normal is 5 years. After expiration, it's recommended by the manufacturer to take it out of service and get some new ones. But again, we're looking at departments that can't afford it, and they'll take whatever they can get. So we're asking that y'all give us approval to donate our expired body armor to the Armor of God, and that way they can refurbish it and send it out to their different agencies in the country.
I make a motion that we approve the police chief to donate the old expired bullet-resistant body armor to the Armor of God project. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's a wonderful. That's good. That's good.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all. Now I'm going to talk to you all about the stats for October 2017. For total calls for service, this past month we had 2,484 calls for service. I do want to emphasize, as you can see on the computer screen, the code enforcement portion of it. Last month we ran 115 calls for service for code enforcement. It's a huge jump, and what we're actually doing with that is we're having code enforcement hit all of our major corridors and major roads in the area to try to clear it out to make our city look beautiful for tourists that are coming in. Not to say we're not trying to do everything else, but we're also, our focus at this point is to hit those major corridors.
Yes. Good.
On the second page, Patrol Division. We are currently in the process of attempting to hire 2 open positions in our Patrol Division. We've done interviews. We've got 2 that we're going on with our background investigation portion of it. So those are pending at this point. In the CID, or Criminal Investigations Division, during the hurricane, we had one particular individual that was just, he was just hammering us with burglaries. We have made an arrest for that, and his name was Jose Delgado. If you can see in the CID division portion of it, he's been charged with 3 counts of burglary. I'm sure he's done more, but we can actually pin him on the 3 that he has done. Our detectives, they went out on Halloween evening and they conducted sex registration offender compliance checks to make sure that our sex offenders were in compliance because of all the kids that were going out onto the street to do the trick-or-treating. They also assisted patrol on answering calls for service. And detectives also have obtained a felony theft warrant for Jesse Moreno. You can switch over to, you have this one right here, if you can go down. There you go. What you see on this screen here is the burglaries and thefts that we've had this past month. And if y'all can really take a look at it, you can see that, a lot of people think that our burglaries and thefts happen at nighttime. As you can, or I'm sorry, on Saturdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. What you're actually seeing on this is it happening in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and especially on Wednesday. If you can see that, they're really hitting us on those days. The next page. On that one there, it's showing the time of day that we're actually getting hit on. And if you can see that, we've got a spike in on October 4th and also a spike on October 25th. On those times, if you go to the next one, please, sir. This one here gives you an illustration of when we are actually being hit hard. And if you see the yellow and the red, it really hammers home that our burglaries and thefts are happening in the middle of the day when people are not home. They're actually at work. And that's why we also push in our PSAs for our social media. We're pushing that, you really need the surveillance equipment. You really need those alarm systems, because that's when it's happening. It's happening in the middle of the day when nobody's at home. And that's all I've got. Y'all have any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Good report.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Okay, now, we go to citizen comments. Citizen comments are intended for the matter that are not scheduled on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record. Be advised that the Texas Open Meeting Act prohibits the city council from responding and discussing your comments. The law authorizes the following: make a statement of factual information, recite existing policies, or advise that this subject may be placed on the agenda for a subsequent meeting.
May I say something from back here?
Well, you kind of got it. Don't be scared. Go to church.
I've got a little vertigo, you'll have to excuse me, but to me this is very important. I wanted to publicly thank
Your name,
the
please.
Aransas Pass Police. My husband's been very handicapped for 14 years.
Can we
And
state
they-
your name and your address, please?
No. My name is Karen Joy Rowe, and I live in the old Attaway House.
Oh, okay.
But the Aransas Pass Police have been absolutely amazing. My husband weighs 215 pounds, and I don't. And when he falls, I call them, and they are there immediately. And I just really appreciate them, and no one knows. I mean, they have a full day at work, and then they go home to most likely another full day, helping make dinner and, feeding the dog and things that we all just take for granted. But I just wanted to tell them thank you so much, and God bless them. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute. I neglected at the last city council meeting to introduce our new building official, Mr. Burl Smith, but he's here this evening, and so in case any of the council were unaware, he's our new building official. He's out at the Public Works Department, and if anyone has any questions, then, please let us know.
Yes. Welcome.
Welcome.
We're glad you're here.
He was from where?
New Mexico.
New
Or
Mexico.
Corpus Christi originally, but
Originally Corpus.
He came to us through Corpus, New Mexico, back here. Okay, good, good. Welcome.
Took a wrong turn in Albuquerque.
Thank you.
Glad to have
Thank
you.
you to have you.
Mr. Mayor, we added an agenda item on there titled City Council or Staff Announcements, in case the City Council has any announcements they would like to make. Also, would like to take this opportunity to remind the public and the council about the town hall meeting scheduled for November 30th over at the Civic Center. It's an opportunity to update citizens on on the status of the recovery and to take questions also from citizens November 30th, 6 p.m. at the Civic Center.
Sure.
I almost forgot. I didn't get up here in the last few meetings. My name is Carol Salinas. I'm a resident of Aransas Pass, and the city manager just reminded me. I noticed on email the newsletter that was sent out, and I liked that. I thought it was a great idea, and I hope it's publicized a little more so people are aware that that's available. And thank you.
Anybody else? Right, then we're going to recess to executive session and be right back.